Great to be with you. Today, we are talking about how to free your life from comparison, conditioning, and the trance of unworthiness. There are so many messages in social media and in our own heads that we have to conform to certain definitions of beauty and success. And today, we're going to give you some new perspectives so that you cannot be trapped, even unknowingly, into the comparison game, which, as the saying goes, compare leads to despair. Who wants some of that? None of us. So this is about looking at these messages through a new lens and finding more freedom and joy. I'm Randy Tarrant, founder of Project Happiness, and I share videos to help with emotional resilience, pathways to well-being, and creating a happier and better life. We have great stuff coming your way, so I invite you to subscribe so you won't miss a thing. So where do we start? First step always is awareness, to be aware of what we've been conditioned to believe so we can decide, is this valid for me personally or not? Always remember you have a choice. I'm going to give you a few scenarios and see which ones resonate for you. Okay, so for ages 20 to 50, women, let's say, there's this stereotype either to get married and have kids or justify why you don't want to. Another stereotype is do it all, work, family responsibilities, often with very little support. And when we're older, there's pressure to take care of both older parents and younger, family members, grandkids, and often people put themselves last. And here's a big one, and very few people are immune. There's pressure to be governed by the advertisers' beauty standards, which happen to make most people feel bad about themselves. Women in their 20s are doing preventative Botox. And when you get to my age, 66, I keep buying these so-called miracle products for sunspots, saggy skin, wrinkled, you name it. It's hard not to be hooked in. And we look to correct our so-called flaws instead of celebrating that we're alive and actually vibrant. I struggle with it too. For younger women, it's doing the relationship dance between self-empowerment and being seen as loving. And they, of course, can coexist. But the pressure of perfectionism, whoa, that's rampant too. I hope that story is changing. And for older women, there's the nonsense of being less than or over the hill and being embarrassed about menopause instead of honoring the hormonal changes that can end up actually giving us more freedom. And they're the so-called norms of sexuality. And who said everything stops when you get older? And this, I just want to say, is not just for women. It's for everyone dealing with society's so-called norms, however they identify. And more often than not, it's so ingrained in what we watch, how we've been brought up, and what we believe by default, that it's rare to challenge it. That's not the first thing in our minds. So here are some questions to help wipe the dust from our glasses. And you can write these down to journal later. 3 questions. One is, what were you brought up to believe? And how did that make you feel about yourself? Number 2, what does society lead you to believe? And what does that do for your confidence? And 3, what do you actually believe is in alignment with your core essence, your true self that can see beyond the usual manipulations? There's an unrecognized prejudice against getting older, let's face it, to which I say, like, really? It is a gift that not everyone gets. Besides, what's the alternative, right? But because of our conditioning, most of us carry this tendency to dread getting older in our hearts, again, without even knowing, the extent of it. But because of our conditioning, most of us carry this tendency to dread getting older in our hearts, again, without even knowing the extent of how it affects us. I love this quote by Mary Pfeiffer. Of course, ultimately, ageism is a prejudice against one's own future self. Just let that sink in for a minute. Most of us are carrying prejudices against our own future self. So what can we do at any age to counter this pervasive groupthink that affects how we feel about ourselves at some very deep levels? Number 1, stay curious. When you are confronted with a negative belief, ask, is this really mine to carry? Or am I getting sucked in to what Tara Brach calls the trance of unworthiness. Number two is cultivate friendships with people of every age, people whose energy resonates with yours. It doesn't matter the age. There are plenty of old souls in young bodies and many in older bodies who have a lot of wisdom, humor, and vibrancy to share. Number three is see beauty everywhere in yourself, in nature, in people's smiles, in the smooth skin of babies, and in the weathered skin of those who have had a few more circles around the sun. Look for the light in people's eyes and don't be dazzled by decoration. Number four is monitor the media. That is, do not swallow it as truth. It's a business at the end of the day that makes money off of people's insecurities. And number five is be fully yourself. The way you dress, your passions, your expressions, your values, your essence knows what's real and what's hype. Remember, in all the days of your life, you are the chooser. Don't inadvertently give your power away. So I hope that you can grab a couple of these thoughts, see what resonates with you, and layer it into your life. Maybe it can shift your perspective a little bit so that you can feel more fully present to embrace what is going on today in this moment and also what is to come.